Looks like we can finally wrap up the unfortunate death of Brian Sicknick, the Capitol Hill police officer who was dead not long after the riot at Capitol Hill. Okay. Now, what's unclear about the situation right now is if he indeed get hit in the head with a fire extinguisher that was shown in the video from a couple days ago that the New York Post put out there. We don't know if that was him. It's reported that he's been hit in the head with a fire extinguisher, okay? But that's not what he died from. I have this heavy article pulled up. There's many other sources out there, but this one's very concise, and it paints a very good picture of who he was, and he was a great dude, and I don't want to diminish this just by telling you guys that he died of a stroke. He didn't die of getting bludgeoned in the head. And we'll circle back around to that because they have 5 points here, and the guy was a great dude, okay? Yeah, he was a Trump supporter. He was a patriot. None of those are pejoratives. He was a good dude who, as a Democratic staffer recalled, he comforted her after the 2016 election. She was losing her mind. He probably knew her, realizing that, you know what, politics isn't everything, and you just need to calm this crazy bitch down. By all accounts, he just sounded like a good dude, and he's getting swept up in the political current of everything that happened a week ago at Capitol Hill, and it's not fair. It's not fair. The guy died of a stroke. Just like how they aren't reporting fairly on how Ashley Babbitt was shot dead, probably unfairly. The investigation's still going on right now, and we'll have that figured out. My opinion on it is she was coming up the steps, she was unarmed, and instead of confronting the group of people like so many other officers from a bunch of different videos that are out there, confronted the group, they just decided to open fire. No reports of weapons on her whatsoever. She was just gunned down, and she just piled in there with the 4 other people to, you know, perhaps I could have chose a better word, but yeah, she's lumped in together there with, unfortunately, Brian Sicknick as well, who you might think, okay, if he was bashed in the head, did that contribute to the stroke? Well, not really. Not really. Now, as you can tell, I'm not a doctor, obviously. But this is from Very Well Health, okay? Traumatic brain injury can cause brain damage. After head trauma, there may be bleeding in the brain, which irritates brain issues. Bleeding is also decreased blood flow to the brain due to blood leakage, and yes, torn blood vessels swelling may occur, putting pressure on brain tissues. Bruises in the brain may take a long time to heal. A concussion is a specific type of traumatic brain injury that is also now recognized as a cause of long-term problems. Let's get to the actual stroke part. Increased hemorrhagic strokes, okay? There is an association between head trauma and an increased incidence of hemorrhagic strokes in the years that follow, not the hours that follow. Okay, what about ischemic strokes due to blockage of blood vessels in the brain, which if you get donked in the head with a fucking fire extinguisher, there's going to be some swelling there. So could it lead to that type of stroke that killed him? Studies show that there is an increased incidence of ischemic, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, in the years after head trauma. No, I think it's disingenuous to lump his death in with what happened at the Capitol riots. Okay, like I said, this probably isn't going to end or earn me any points, but that's the facts. Okay, it still sucks that he died, but we should know and not be fed a false line of bullshit when it comes to this, because there's so much out there. And we gotta also bring up another topic that I'm very passionate about, and that's the ongoing legal battles of Parler right now. I'd love to see them back. I'm optimistic about it because their case is very strong, and lots of people are reading it that they'll probably get their temporary injunction from Amazon, and then that'll lead them off to a different platform. At least this is how I'm interpreting this last part here, so take that with a grain of salt. And like, I'm not a doctor, I'm also not a lawyer, but if they can get that temporary injunction from Amazon to get those 30 days up there, or whatever would be left, that would prove their viability, because I think as soon as they come back on, their membership is going to skyrocket, showing that they are a viable platform, and then make it much easier to get a new hosting service. That's just what I'm thinking. I might be totally off, or who knows. I'm sure the banks are probably just right behind them to cut off all of their payment processing, but there are different avenues for that as well, and that would just be another legal entanglement. And as I just replied to a comment, a very thoughtful comment on that as well, there needs to be a lot more technology behind all of these other platforms, blockchain, what have you. All of that stuff can be implemented. Parler just needs the time. But speaking of Parler, they were slandered, and this entire cascade of events is all predicated on the Capitol Hill riots. And I'll call them riots because it's a textbook example of that. I might just jest with some of the verbiage, but at the end of the day, it was declared a riot, and to be fair, that's what it was, okay? Textbook riot. Didn't result in anything getting burnt down or any severe damage. I think we can all agree on that. Glenn Greenwald, one of these smart lefties that are left, for a lack of a better term, did some actual journalism. I know it's weird for an actual journalist to do actual journalism in today's climate, but he did some good work here. And it's important to point this out because all of the slander that's going Parler's way right now is that they were manifesting all of this far right-wing hatred, or have we moved past far right and now it's just white supremacists? Okay, all of these white supremacists were just coming together and fomenting all of their hatred, and then they just let it go out there at the Capitol Hill. One problem. A tweet right from Glenn Greenwald himself. Did you know how many people arrested in connection with the Capitol invasion were active users of Parler? 0. The planning was largely done on Facebook. Where is the deplatforming of Facebook? If they're hosting all of this, if these are the claims that are against Parler for hosting all of this violent rhetoric, putting all of these heinous posts out there, if all of the planning is done on Facebook and Twitter, because, okay, maybe not all the Capitol Hill planning was done on Facebook or was done on Twitter. It was done exclusively on Facebook. What's the excuse for all of the Antifa and BLM stuff being on Twitter? If you have rules, you have to apply them evenly. Otherwise, you don't have rules. You just have hypocrisy. Oh, wait, they just have hypocrisy, obviously. But yeah, we'll run through this pretty quickly. Americans for Limited Government Rick Manning today issued the following statement responding to reporting from journalist Glenn Greenwald that planning of the Capitol Hill riot was largely done on Facebook, not Parler. Liberal journalist Glenn Greenwald reports that the January 6th attack on U.S. Capitol is largely planned on Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook, while Silicon Valley Big Tech has baselessly taken down Parler.com and banned the app from smartphones. That's more or less what they are attempting to do, and which they have been wholeheartedly successful in the past few days. But we took a look at the responses and the actual lawsuit and the response to the response, and it's much deeper and much more nuanced than that. It's a good 30,000 foot view, but there's a bunch of other little inner workings in there as well. Zuckerberg's company would now be similarly deplatformed if everything was equal, but we know that's not what it is. All of those calls for equality, it just means supremacy of my chosen group. Americans for Limited Government abhors Big Tech's knee-jerk abuse of power against Parlers in false claims that they were advocating violence. Those companies that arbitrarily cost Parler, a rapidly emerging competitor to Twitter, millions of dollars that should immediately take action to reinstate Parler's presence on their platform and to settle the lawsuit Parler has filed against them. The lesson America should... let me try that again. The lesson America should learn from Big Tech's abuse of political power is that these companies need to be subjected to antitrust action to prevent their market dominance from again being misused into the future. Exactly. If you're going to have rules, apply them equally to everybody. And in the event that you don't want to do that, fine. Just let us build all of our alternatives without having to create new fucking technology to keep you cretins out. Because yes, if you would have just let Parler exist, you know what, maybe if you wanted to terminate your contract within 30 days, fine. You should have just let it all play out legally. But instead, you're going to try to take this to your highly politicized courts in order to get a favorable precedent set that you guys in Big Tech and the media helping it along to just squash out any opportunity for an opposition into the future, and that everybody just has to get pushed like cattle towards Facebook, Twitter, and all of the establishment venues where you can be further subjugated to the unequal distribution of rules. I don't know how else to put it. I don't want to have to keep inventing new and fun ways to carve out my own corner. Like a shovel, wood, a hammer, and a handful of nails have worked forever, but when your adversary has the entire carpenters union on one side and all you're stuck with is just a fucking screwdriver and your thumb up your ass, there's not a whole hell of a lot you can do. But yeah, even just linking through to the rest of the article here, he's got a whole bunch of other sources. Like, we can just quickly take a look here. A couple of his different tweets. Tech monopolies, Facebook, Google, Apple, Amazon have more concentrated wealth and power than any in history. Yes, I think Google is what? If it's not the largest company in the world, it's right there, and then Apple's not that far behind. I think maybe Amazon's number one, but at the same time, you're just looking at what, 4 of the top 10, or maybe even 4 of the top 5 most powerful, definitely the most influential companies in the world. They have used brute force 3 times in 3 months to manipulate U.S. politics. Yep, censoring the New York Post, the Hunter Biden laptop, banning Trump, yes, and destroying Parler, yes. Any sort of, because Parler right now is the only one that threatens that hegemony that Twitter, Facebook, and Google possess over all of communications. Let's be completely honest. If you remove any of those from the ecosystem, the entirety of the internet would change fundamentally. And Parler was the only one that was on the horizon with gaining momentum, becoming viable in and of itself. It was the only one that was going to threaten that. And because they're all bros, like he said, like Glenn says here in the final line, and liberals are overwhelmingly supportive of themselves and their ideas. Not you. You're from the outside. They're very good at defining who their enemies are, not the ones within their own ranks, just people coming into their party. They're very good at figuring out who they shan't let into the castle. But yeah, all of that was parsed out and then cataloged extensively in this article here, which I'll link to as well. It's a girthy read, to be completely honest, but it's well worth it as well because he goes into a lot more detail of how Amazon, Facebook, Google, Apple, what have you, are all colluding together to snuff out competition. And of course, he's getting 7 shades of shit for it, but it's honest, true reporting, and it's great to see. And it's showing that Capitol Hill was just kind of a, I hate to use the term, but a false flag event in order to institute all of the crazy shit that's going on in the aftermath of this. All of the shutting down of Parler, all of the, I don't know if I brought up a proper article on this, but I'll just let you know based on what I know right now. No-fly lists, like the journalists are getting put on no-fly lists. Anybody who's been known to have been at the Capitol didn't necessarily have to be at the riot, let alone been in the Capitol building itself, have either been put on that no-fly list or fired from their jobs. And I forget who mentioned it today, but they're calling for anybody who's been charged in relation. Nothing specific about going into the Capitol. If they've been charged with anything in Washington, D.C. on the 6th, they'll be put on a no-fly list. So, incoming Chinese social credit score system. We all kind of thought that the Chinese-style government was coming from a Biden administration. It was one of those whispers in the back of your head with a warm breath on your neck. But you didn't expect it to be blitzkrieging into Congress. But, yeah, here we are. But to move on from Capitol Hill, okay, because they're going to be beefing up security because, you know, Joe Biden's big installation is coming on the 20th. And it's funny, right? Because not that long ago, prior to the coof, when the walls were so bad and, oh, they don't work and you can't, you know, make an idea, or no person's illegal. I forget what the fucking call was at the time, but crews add barbed wire fences near the U.S. Capitol on Thursday. Yes, because there's going to be such a great turnout, and I'll just go ahead and smooth this ahead. Yeah, they're putting razor wire up there, just really making it look like a banana republic, installing a brand new dictator. I mean, the 46th president of the United States. But that's not all, because there's going to be 20,000 National Guard members stationed around D.C. for the inauguration itself. I imagine that there's going to be more National Guard, there's going to be more police officers than actual people that turn out. There were reports that this was going to be a virtual inauguration, but Biden said he's all right with having an outdoor inauguration, whatever that means. But it's going to be so sparsely attended because nobody likes Biden. Okay, we've seen the turnout from his rallies. There will be more cars parallel parked on the street than there will actually be people out there. So I think I showed that picture of, what was that? One of his many speeches of victory from the election itself, and they panned the vehicle. I think it was CNN who panned the vehicles, and there was nobody in the vehicles that were in the parking lot. So it was just a 78-year-old man in a parking lot yelling at a bunch of cars. What a sad analogy for a sad incoming administration. So that's why anything that happens on the 20th, and I don't anticipate, and I'm normally wrong with my optimistic projections, or rather prognostications rather, that nothing coming from Trump supporters is going to happen, okay? And if it does, that will be as astroturfed as what is on Biden's scalp. There's no reason for Trump supporters to be there, okay? All they're going to do is just demonize you there and just use your mere essence as a reason to push to further, push and further their hateful rhetoric. So no, if anybody's planning to go there and counter-protest on the 20th, just don't. There's no point. I'm sure Trump will be announcing something. I don't know where he's going to be able to get the message out, but there was always that other thought as well that on the 20th, Trump will be announcing his presidential campaign for 2024. And if he does that, I think it will be hilarious. And he should host it at that golf course that just got stripped of the PGA Championship in 2020. Up there in New Jersey. I think that would be hilarious. So if there's one celebration, and that one hasn't been announced or anything, I just think that it would be cute. Feel free to go to that one, because I think that one will be a hell of a lot more fun than just watching an old man mumble his way through an oath of office you're going to have to hear, 6 months later? By somebody with a much more nasally and terrible voice. Oh, and since we're doing a Capitol Hill wrap-up, I guess at the same time, I just seen some breaking news as well. That dude right there, John Sullivan, I covered him. He was one of the first ones when I thought that everything wasn't quite on the level. Yeah, he was pushing his Insurgents USA on CNN. They knew this guy. They seen the pictures. He's been a former guest within the past couple of months, and he's one of the formal defendants that has been charged by the United States of America for civil disorders, entering a restricted building or grounds, violent entry, or disorderly conduct. I haven't been against charging people who've broken the law, and you just love to see a Black Lives Matter activist get charged for being violent. I'd love to see Anderson Cooper and that entire cabal try to spin that, because I don't know about you, but you can't really fake that one. And that bitch has a fucking huge head. It's shaped like the NFL shield. Jesus. But yes, this was the planned ending, actually. So, because who will be taking their oath of office before Joe Biden on the 20th? Well, that will be Kamala Harris, the future president of the Senate. And what is her edict? Well, on January 20th, Senator Kamala Harris will be sworn in as Vice President of the United States. I can barely keep it together. There's a call for women to wear pearls to honor Harris and to empower women. A Facebook page, Wear Pearls, on January 20th, 2021, has 300,000 members. Atlanta Journal-Chronicle would like to see your pearls. Send a photo to spool@ajc.com. Well, I'm sure that the first email that they received was from W. Brown at stateofcalifornia.com, as he is an expert at providing Kamala Harris with a pearl necklace. I thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.